Hello, everybody. So for the last 10 weeks, we've been learning the basics of dental photography. And we've gotten from the very, very first steps all the way up to this point. And during this week, we're actually going to do an assignment on taking a photograph using a combination light source. What do I mean by that? We will be using a flash photography setup in combination with, a lot of times people will use the ambient light in the room, but we will actually be using some string lights from a Christmas tree to create a nice composition for our wax up. It's not a very complicated way to take a photograph, however, it does require quite a bit of attention to detail. Just because if you don't line up things just correctly and you don't have the right light hitting the right spots, it will not look that good. So without further ado, let's get started and I'll show you guys how I set up my photographs. Now, first things first, we have our flashes set up inside our modified bowls, just like I was showing you guys before. I've got my triggers set up in there and my flashes are set to a certain power. In my case, they're set to 1/32 of power, and I have these diffusers in front of them. Now, I've modified my setup slightly since the last time I showed this to you guys. I've actually painted these bowls black, and I'm using little dish stands instead of PVC pipe. I just decided to make it a bit more user-friendly, let's say. First thing I do before I kind of get right deep into everything, I try to adjust my lights to get appropriate amount of light on the wax up. Actually, I try to get a little bit more than necessary because I'm actually going to be dimming that light a little bit down the line. So at this point, I'm going to angle my flashes at about 45 degrees, just like that. And I'm going to angle my wax up at about 45 degrees, and I'll actually go into automatic focus. Change my focus point just a little bit. And I'm going to take a picture. Now, my wax up is pretty well lit. It's a little bit hot right here in this area. I could maybe even use a little bit more light, but at this point I think it's going to be okay. So I am at aperture 20, 1/160th of a second at ISO 200. If I wanted to, I can just increase my ISO to 50, let's say, take another photograph and have it be just a little bit hotter. Okay, maybe like this. But for the time being, let's leave it at 200. And we'll just keep it at that. Okay. So next thing I need to do is find out how much of this light is actually being pushed all the way to the background line. At this point, the background is black, and it's kind of difficult to check how much light is actually bouncing off here or spilling from the flashes and getting to my background. So in order for me to kind of see that, I'm actually going to put something white in the back to see if I'm getting the right amount of light spillage or if it's too much. Okay, so let me switch my camera. So I'm placing a little bit of a white foam in the back to kind of address my situation, and I'm going to take another photograph. Now you can see that my background is fairly well lit. It's still gray, but it's pretty light gray. It's not dark gray. So that tells me I have a lot of light coming from here all the way to the back. And I actually need to limit this because what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using a second light source, and I'll have to actually drop my shutter speed down in order to capture that light. But more importantly, in this situation, if my light from my flashes is getting to the background where those lights are, it's going to make those lights look bleak. They're not going to be very bright. So I need to make sure I have the light that I need on my subject, but not light that's spilling over to the background. And let's try to manage that a little bit. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to place these grids right in front of my light sources, like this. And it's going to give my light some direction. It's not going to allow it to kind of bounce all over the place. I mean, it'd be helpful if I placed these grids in front of my diffusers, but I don't like doing that because if I do that, a lot of times in the reflections you can see the actual grids. So I'm going to limit it by this in this way and take another photograph. Now you can see that my background is actually getting a lot darker than it was before, right? It was gray before, a light gray. Now it's actually becoming dark gray. Sorry, wrong picture. Here it is. So this was the before, and this is now. I'm getting quite a bit of light right here, still getting proper exposure on my wax up. Maybe these areas are a little dark, but we'll work on it in just a little bit. But for now, I'm going to try to limit the amount of light that's getting back there still. And the way I'm going to do this, I'm actually going to put some flags in front of it. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to take these reflectors that are actually white on one end and they're actually black on the other end and silver here. And I'm going to position them in a way that they will limit the amount of light getting to the back. And the way I'm going to do it, hopefully, is they're going to be positioned right outside my frame. So they'll be limiting the light to the back, but not going to be in my frame. So let's take a look here. I think I might have went too far in. Right there's good. So this side's good. And I'm going to do this side now. Okay. So hopefully this works. What I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to change the angle of this a little bit and bring it this direction, because I am trying to envelop more of the denture with light. And let's see how well this is going to work. Let's take another picture. Okay, it's not looking too bad at all, actually. I'm getting a nice amount of light in the background. You see it's kind of dark gray. So I think I've limited the amount of light as much as I can for this particular situation. Now I'm at 1/160th of a second, aperture 20, ISO 200. Let me just try one more thing. I'm going to increase my sensitivity just a little bit to see how much light I can get on this wax up here. It's a little bit better. I think I like the previous one more, actually. So let me try that again. Yeah, let's leave that at that. I kind of like where the light is here, and I like that it's not spilling to the back as much. Okay, so from this point, we have limited our light as much as we can to about 90% where we want it to be. And now it's time to start introducing our secondary light source. Now, one thing to remember is that when we use a secondary light source, which is a constant light, we're going to be reducing our shutter speed down quite a bit. I'm going to be going down to probably 1/25th or even lower. If when you go down that much in shutter speed, it does not affect the flash at all, because the flash just works so quickly. It doesn't matter what shutter speed you are, as long as you're below the syncing speed of the camera. So in my case, as long as you're below 1/250th of a second, it does not affect the flash. What affects the flash is the ISO and the aperture. But when we lower it, it will actually affect, when we lower the shutter, it will actually affect our ambient light. So the light that's in the room is going to start coming through. So when I'm assigning stuff and getting stuff adjusted, I will have the lights in the room still turned on. Once I have it all dialed in, I will go ahead and turn all the lights off in the room. Actually, before I'll do that, I'll focus my camera in manual mode onto my subject. Then I'll get everything else turned off, and then I'll take my photograph. So let's go ahead and start working on that. Okay, so at this point, I'm actually going to remove my white background because I no longer need it, since I'm not shooting against the white background. I'm shooting against a black background. Okay, And I'm going to bring in my LED lights. I'm going to position them right about here. Now, the further back from the denture my lights are, the more out of focus they will be, but also the less light will be visible. So I need to be kind of careful with it. And you see that I've chosen the LED lights that have a darker kind of cord. The wiring is actually dark because I don't want it reflecting light from my flash and kind of showing up there. I want them to be shown like as individual kind of little light pieces right there. So let's get that probably right about here. Look through my camera. That looks pretty good. So just for, educational sake, let's just take a picture as is and see what those lights are going to show up as in the background. Now, what you can see is you can see some specks of the lights, but they're not very bright, and they're definitely out of focus. But what I don't like also is the fact that this is really just blending in with the background. And I think once we start adjusting our shutter speeds, it's actually going to change quite a bit. So let's do this. I'm actually going to adjust the shutter on my camera from 1160 is down all the way down to probably, let's start at 1/30th, just to see where we're at, and we'll kind of go from there. I'm going to switch my camera to manual focus and just leave it at that, because once I turn the lights down, my camera's automatic focus is not going to work. So we're going to work in the dark here for a little bit, so bear with me. So first things first, let's make sure we switch to manual focus. And let me just kind of fine tune my, okay, my focus is fine tuned. I'm going to start turning off all of my overhead lights. Okay, it's going to get very dark in here. So the only light I have on is the light from these Christmas lights and my monitors. And hopefully my monitors are not giving too much spillage to things. So let's take a photograph at 1/130th. So it's not bad. I mean, I'm getting some nice brighter lights in the back, and my wax up is still lit, but I don't have too much separation right here. So I'm actually going to reduce my shutter. Let's reduce it to 1/10 and take another photograph. Let me turn the light off and take another picture. Okay, you see how it's starting to illuminate my model right here. So that means we need to kind of increase my light. And you see I'm getting reflection from my paper that my denture is sitting on. I actually don't like that. I want that to be more of a matte surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch and put something that's less reflective underneath this denture. So let me try that and see where that takes me. I'm going to turn this light on for now. I'm going to have to move some stuff around a little bit, and we're going to have to refocus and reposition, unfortunately. But a good picture takes time, and we're going to have to take that time, I guess. So at this point, I'm going to place a piece of construction paper all the way here, and hopefully that's going to give me less reflection. I'm refocusing right here. Now let me position my lights, my flashes, back where I wanted them to make sure they're not in the frame. There's good. Right here is good as well. Okay. Now I need to work on my flags right here to make sure I don't get too much light hitting the back. Okay, this side's good. What are we doing here? So that's pretty good. Okay. Looks like we're all set. Let's turn the lights down again. Now I'm liking this a lot more because I'm seeing, turn these lights on real quick, because I'm seeing the background lights and they're nice and washed out and they're producing a nice little glow. And I'm starting to get contours right here. But I think we can start reducing our shutter. I'm going to kind of go drastic and go all the way down to 1 second. So it's going to be slow shutter. If you're not tethered like I am, and you're going to take a picture at that slow of a speed, what I highly recommend you guys do is set your camera on a timer, because just the pressure from you hitting that button and creating that shake in the camera is probably going to be reflected in the picture. But let's take a look and see what I have on my end. Now you've heard how slow that shutter is. And let's take a look at our background. You see how well lit the background is now? It's kind of a nice warm glow, and we could see the outline of the entire wax up. So that's pretty good. We're actually getting a little bit of the wiring that's coming through. So maybe let's slow down that, speed up that shutter just a little bit. Let's go 1/6 of a second and see where we're at, because I want to find that nice combination where it's not too bright and not too dark. We're about there. Maybe just a little slower, maybe 1/3. Yep, I think that does the trick. I think we have enough light in the background to kind of give us what we want, and we still have separation from here. What I can try to do is maybe light up my front a little bit better. I'm going to try to do that by maybe changing some angles and maybe bringing the denture closer a little bit to the lights and see where we're at. Let's go and try to do that real quick. So we have our settings dialed in fairly close, but we want to make sure we get enough light on our denture. And I'm going to start moving this a little closer, just as close as I can without actually being in the frame. Here on this side, start doing the same thing here. I've got too close on this end. Okay, I think that might be it. Turning the overhead lights off. I'm going to turn off these lights as well, and I'm going to take another photograph. Now that's a good amount of light on my denture right here. I have my reflector just a little bit in the frame. I can crop that out, no problem. I can actually, let's, no, I don't want to mess with the ISO just yet. Okay, let me quickly just move. So barely just the edge of it is in the frame. So that should probably take care of it. I'm going to leave my settings the way they are right here. And I'm going to turn my lights off and take another photograph. Now you hear how slow that shutter is, right? It's just that kind of speed. If you're touching the camera while doing it, it's going to give you some camera shake, especially when you're taking pictures this close up. You know, it's going to be something's going to be out of focus. It's not looking bad, folks. I'm kind of liking where we're at. What I might want to do is maybe bring those lights a bit closer. They might not be as washed out, but they might be a little brighter. I kind of want to work with, let me turn this on back. I kind of want to work with the position of the lights in relation to the actual wax up. So far, I'm liking everything I'm seeing, but I just want to fine tune it just a little bit. So let's try that. And let's try moving the lights forward just to see what we're going to get. Now I'm feeling that we're probably going to get some spillage of the light and my wires are going to show up. But if I don't try it, I won't be happy. So let me at least try this, and then I'll try moving them back, actually, and trying it that way. All right, let's turn our lights off and take another picture. As I suspected, you see we were starting to see the actual wiring in the picture, but we do have better separation. But I don't mind the separation we had before. I mean, this was pretty good separation in my opinion. Later on, I'm going to show you guys how to do kind of a compositional shot with addition of some other elements, not just the lights, and I think that would really bring that picture together. But for now, I wanted to show you just the light portion of things. So let's go ahead and try to actually bring the lights further away and adjust the settings that way, okay? And now we're going to go all the way back, as far back as possible. These lights, I'm actually going to spread them out a little bit more. I'm going to go from this side as well. Okay. It's about as far back as I can go on these. Let's turn the lights off. Okay, at this point, let's leave the settings as they are. Turn the lights off. Take another photograph and see what we got. I like it. I actually like this a lot. I like the fact that the lights are more out of focus and we're getting quite a bit of light still. We have a nice separation right here. And our denture is nice and focused. The one thing I don't like is the relationship of how much background I have and how much foreground I have. So I just have way too much there and not enough here. So I want to reposition my camera to in a way that I actually can capture maybe more of the denture setup and fill my frame a little bit more with the denture. If not, I can always just crop this, and I actually might condense these lights a little bit more and see where that takes me. So with these kind of things, you can't rush them. You have to kind of concentrate and try to bring the best possible detail you can into the picture. It takes a lot of trial and error, so I'm trying and I'm erroring, I guess. So let's take a look. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to angle my camera downward a little bit. So I'm capturing a bit more of my setup. So I'm going almost all the way down right here. I'm actually going to move it just a little bit more back. So maybe I'm going to pick up some more of that light from the back. I'm going to refocus. I'm going to bring my flash as close back into the frame. actually have to change this angle right like this because the reflector is getting into my frame. Okay, that's pretty good. Let me refocus. Right here, I think. Turn the lights off. Okay, and let's take another photograph. Okay, that's not bad. It's not great, to be honest with you guys. I kind of don't like this part right here, so I might want to bring it just a little closer to this, just so I don't have that whole, articulation mount showing up. I might want to kind of be right about right here. I mean, I can always crop it if I go into develop module and go right here. I can always just hold down shift and crop things a little bit this way to get the look that I'm going for. So it looks something like this. But I'd like to get this accomplished in camera first as much as I can, and then do any kind of addition post-processing. So let me try and do that. I think I'm going to break my switch by going back and forth with these lights off, lights on. I need to get one of those, clap on, clap off things like from the 90s. Or just have everything hooked up to Alexa. Tell her, Alexa, turn the lights on, Alexa, turn the lights off. Okay, I'm refocused. I'm going to bring my camera just a bit more closer, actually. Adjust this right there. Just fine tuning. And a lot of times when I fine tune stuff, I end up messing it up even more. But hopefully this is not one of those times. I feel like I've changed my angle on my camera just a little bit too much, but we'll find out here in a minute. Okay, turning the lights off. Taking another photograph. I think this is pretty much close to what I was looking for. Now, I like how everything's lit on my denture. I like that my model is well lit. I like the lights in the background. I like the amount of light that it's producing. And the rest of the stuff I can do in post-production. But before I start doing that, I'm going to just play with my shutter just a little bit, just to see where I'm at. If I go a little bit slower or a little bit faster, So at 1/5, not 2/5, 1/2.5, I'm starting to see the wires a little bit. It's not a big deal because especially if I crop in, I don't see them too much, and I can always increase the contrast, but at 1/3, I don't have that issue, as you can see right here. It's just dark enough to where the lights don't show up as much. There's still a little bit, but not too much. So let's go just a little bit faster at 1/4 of a second and see where we're at. Now you're seeing, guys, that the foreground doesn't change because the foreground is lit with the flash. And you actually can't see me. I'm actually a little dark here, but that's not important. And 1/4, it's not bad. I actually see less of the wires, but the light in the back is not as pronounced. So I think 1/3 is probably the best combination kind of everything. Okay, so let's leave it at that. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go into my develop module again, and I'm going to crop this photograph just a little bit, just so I can get the look that I'm going for. Right about here. Okay. Now, let me try to play around with my settings a little bit and see what I can actually produce. So if I increase my whites and decrease my black, actually no, let me increase my black here a little bit. No, let's leave it as this for now. I might actually work with this with a couple of filters. So maybe I can bring some of this darkness out, but I just don't want to mess with the background. If I increase the contrast, what it does, it actually hides the wires in the back, but it also makes the denture dark. So I'm going to leave my contrast as is. Maybe reducing my highlights will do some good. I get some richer colors. So let's do that and increase my exposure a little bit. So I always shoot in RAW. When you're shooting in RAW, you have a lot more ability to kind of edit stuff out or in. Still right about here. We can warm our picture up just a little bit because we're shooting with the yellow in the back, and the flash is actually 5600K. The lights don't match up as much. So if I warm up the picture a little bit, it will warm up the front as well as the back. So I think it creates a nice kind of combination of things. I can add a little bit more of a tint of pink in the front. Right here, we can actually sharpen things a little bit. I think I scrolled past it. So to about here and soften it right here. Okay. Now I'm going to take my filter right here, radial filter, and I'm going to actually open up these areas just a little bit more. Okay. And I'm going to do that by increasing my shadows a little bit. I might have to make this a little wider. Shadows and a little bit of highlights, just so it kind of stands out a little bit more. So let's leave that as is. Good. I need a little bit of shadow everywhere just to create that feeling of contrast, right? Because if I just blast everything with light, it's not going to be very productive, because it's just going to be, everything's going to be lit up. There's not going to be any character to the photograph. I got a little bit of a scratch or something right here that I don't, oops, Control Z, that I want to get rid of. And since it's not on my denture, I don't really care about that because it's not affecting my actual work. So I'm just going to clean up my model just a little bit so it doesn't take away from the experience. Just removing the dust from things. Okay, now I'm going to try to do, I'm going to try to use the linear filter option here, and I'm going to see if I can reduce the highlights back here. Maybe not that much. Maybe just increase the contrast. Yeah, that would be better here. Okay, yeah, that's good. And I think at this point, I think I'm just going to leave it as is, just like that, because this is kind of the vision that I had for this picture, and this is what I got. So simply saying, it's a very long way to get a simple picture. Now, a lot of times you will adjust things and they might not give you the look that you're looking for, but moving them back might bring you back to where you want to be. Kind of play with your lights, play with your settings. Make sure you're shooting from either a tripod or something stationary where you can just set your camera on and put it on a timer if you don't have a tethering option or a wireless trigger. It took me a while to get to this point. I had to kind of go back and forth to get the results that I wanted, and it probably will take you guys a while as well. Just remember that the shutter speed affects the ambient light or the light that's in the room and a constant light source. When it comes to flashes, because they work so quickly, the two things that affect it are either going to be ISO or aperture. So shutter speed is for ambient, ISO and aperture is for flash and for ambient as well. Go ahead and take 3 photographs from different angles and upload them for the assignment grading. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. And as always, good luck.